Listen, do you hear it? Machine spirit, it speaks to us. So, you might be asking, what the hell am I looking at? Before I answer that, let me ask you something first. Did you ever think to yourself, oof, I would really like that shiny new laser, or darn, it would be so nice to upgrade all my assembly machines, but I'm just too much of a lazy bastard to route all the inputs and bells into the system and start a new assembly line? Well, do I have the solution for you? Presenting the everything machine. This one magical line can basically build anything you could ever wish for. Uh, well, almost, kind of. So, what does it actually do? Well, let's say, for example, I want to automate building some inserters. Usually, I would have to set up the assemblies for the iron gears, for the electric circuits, for the copper cables, and then weave it all together with some fine belt spaghetti. However, I'm a very lazy bastard, and that sounds like far too much work. So instead, it would be much nicer if I could just have one assembly machine which builds all the necessary byproducts it needs. And there's actually a nice way to do this, since you have the option to set the recipe for the assembly machine via the circuit network. So if I turn actually the machine on and set it to build some inserters, then the machine will figure out on its own that, for example, it's missing iron gears, and it starts producing the necessary iron gears. And after it has enough iron gears, it says, okay, I'm missing copper cables, so time to build some copper cables. And but I still need the circuits, and so I start building that. And this process repeats until it has enough base resources, and it is capable of producing some inserters. Will take a little bit of time till it manages the first batch. So let's just watch the beauty in action. And there we are, some inserters built. And all we started with were some basic copper plates and iron plates. This process naturally works up with basically anything you can imagine. As long as you can supply the base resources, you can build anything from a simple inserter to a bulk inserter, be it transporter or express transport belts or whatever you would like. So how do you actually use it? Well, despite all the complicated cabling in the back, the front is actually very easy to use. There's one constant combinator here where you can set up the recipe you want to have, for example, like an assembling machine. And once I turn it on, it starts building the assembly machine. The terminal on the right here always displays the wished end product. The terminal on the left shows what the machine is currently missing. Like in this case, it's missing iron plates, and since it can't build iron plates on its own, it can't progress. So if I put in some iron plates, it will switch what it needs. For example, now it needs iron gears, it can build the iron gears, so it does the add. So basically the left display is just the information setting to see if there are any problems. Now, let's turn it off again. One important step is if you want to switch the recipe, you have to turn it off so that this skull symbol displays. This is important since there are in the back are some memory cells, and those only get reset if the skull shows up. Otherwise, you would have a mixed recipe. So always first turn it off, change the recipe, and turn it back on. Then you have a second assembler here. This always outputs a specific number. I have set it to 20 here. This number specifies how many resources it should build up. For example, I've set it to 20, so the machine tries, for example, if it would build some circuits, it would say, okay, I'm below 20 circuits, build it up until I have 20 circuits. Once I have 20 circuits, that's enough, and I can switch over to the next recipe. So the important part here is if you have a recipe like, for example, the underground belt. The underground belt needs 80 iron gears. So this number should at least be like 100 iron gears, because it would only build enough iron gears to build the underground belt if I set our number to 100. When below 100, it would never be able to build the underground belts. You might be asking why 100 and not like 80, because you need 80 for underground belts. The main issue is that the machine knows how much is in the chests and in the assembly machine, but it doesn't know what's currently picked up by the bulk inserters. So like if a bulk inserter picks up 10 iron gears and you have only 80 in the box, then the machine would say, okay, I don't have enough iron gears for the underground belt, and would set over to the next recipe. So always send it a bit beyond the minimum necessary amounts. Usually for my blueprint, I've set it to 120. This works basically for almost anything, unlike a nuclear reactor or something. It also has the nice benefit that the machine builds up some back storage. So anytime you have like a lot of demand for inserters, for example, it has enough in storage on ingredients to immediately build more. And then the last combinator. This one isn't necessary most of the time. However, the machine has some limitations. The biggest limitations are the liquids. The machine can only take in one liquid currently. I'm not sure if there are maybe better solutions for this, especially since I haven't played through the newest update yet. But currently, this build can only take one liquid. This means, for example, if you want to build something like the Utility Science Pack, this would need two different kinds of liquids, the oil and the acid. The oil for the flying robot frames, the acid for the processing unit. And wouldn't be able to build it since it has only one input. The solution for this is this combinator. I can say to this combinator, all right, I don't want you to build processing units, for example. In this case, I have to set it to -1. And once I do this, let's maybe try it with, oh no, it's fine. Once I do this, the assembly machine won't put in the recipe for the processing units. This way I can block it from using up any acid. And in this case, I would have to supply the processing unit as a separate production line. And that's basically it about the basic workings of the machine. Now there are some points to note. The first is, we only have one inserter to actually insert into the machine. So we would have to route everything through here. For example, you could run like a crazy sushi belt with every resources. However, I use a different solution for this. I have what I would call a sushi box. If I put it here, the sushi box has a very simple idea. If I put, for example, in 100 copper plates in the front, the sushi box will spread out those 100 copper plates per 30 per each box, basically. It always splits the resources equally between all boxes. And I can also put in like some steel, and it would basically do the same with the steel. So as long as you can basically route as many basic resources as you want into the machine, and the sushi box will spread it equally, which allows our main inserter to also make an assembly machine to get what it needs. So if I would want to set this up, I could just go here, say, all right, I want my sushi boxes. Then I can route in some iron, for example, and some copper. Now, if I just put an inserter here, it would just fill the machine without end. So instead, what I have is a sushi entrance, I call it. which is basically just is just an inserter with an enabling condition. In this case, I say I have copper plates here, and I say if in my box are less than 100 copper plates, put in more copper plates. So the end result is that the first box will always be filled with 100 copper plates, and the follow-up boxes will try to spread those equally, which ends with the end result being that every box has 100 copper plates. And on the other side, the same idea, just with iron plates. And of course, I could do this with as much basic resources as I want. So for example, at my main lines, I actually have all kinds of basic resources needed to produce different stuff. And from there, the machine is basically finished and you can run, and you can expand it as much as you like. You can just expand the line for more sushi boxes, and then you can add on another everything machine. And from there, you could just set it up for whatever you may need. So if you build a bit faster, not enough resource that. But you could basically set up very quickly a second line, for example, for some underbelts or whatever. Now there are some issues with the design. One is that the sushi box basically has a throughput of one bulk inserter. So usually you only want to run stuff which hasn't constant demand. So like assembly machine, if you want some level 3 assembling machines, this would work great. If you want to make your science, if you want to produce your science from here, you would run into some issues. You can do it, but usually if you do it, what you want to do is set up a separate line from where it's filled. So that in case you haven't enough, so that simply your production from the everything machine doesn't overreach the throughput of one bulk inserter, basically. As you can see, there are, however, a couple of advantages as well. The first is you can very neatly fit in some beacons between the assembling machines, which basically means if you think about it, those 6 beacons don't just power, in this case, my yellow science production. They power every single step of the assembly machine needed for my yellow science production. So it's basically like powering 10 different assembling machines for different resources. This means the setup is kind of efficient in terms of it doesn't need a lot of modules and it doesn't need a lot of quality modules. So you could set up a very powerful quality system without too much fuss. There's also, as mentioned, we have the liquid limitation. We can only have one liquid inside. So as said, one solution is to simply run it as separate lines. In this case, I've set it up as such that this everything machine doesn't build my blue circuits, and I simply route the blue circuits from another everything machine which can build them. In this case, I made a separate line here, but you could also just route it back into the sushi box and go from there, however you like. One thing to keep in mind with the sushi box, since it kind of spreads the resources all over the place, you have a large stockpile of stuff, which is nice in the sense that the machine, if you have spike demands, they're usually covered. However, it's not so great for stuff like the blue circuits, which are slow to produce, and you would have a lot of blue circuits lying around without achieving anything, basically. You would basically need a lot of time to fill the whole all the sushi pockets with blue circuits, and then most of them wouldn't even get used. So it's not too bad with basic resources like with iron copper plates, but with higher end gear stuff, I would try to avoid it. So lastly, the nice thing is that the setup doesn't require a lot actually for in research terms. You can set it up with only blue science. So you basically need the assembly machines and the circuit network stuff, and then you can build it. Only downside is that fast inserters have a very low throughput compared to bulk inserters. So you wouldn't put too much high demand stuff in it. But you totally can do this very early in the game without having to deal with all the usual routing. And you don't have basically, so you don't have to need to wait for requester chests in the late game to set up your logistics network for a shopping mall or something. Yep. So basically that's it. I will leave all the blueprints for setting this up in the description below. If there is enough interest, I might do a second video explaining what's actually happening with the circuits here in the background and the mysterious second assembly machine. But yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed it and have fun with it. If you enjoy being lazy as I am, I'm sure you will love this. So what does the machine actually do? Well, let's say I want to automate building some fast inserters. Why are you coming here? I should have disabled you.